There's a story in Greek mythology which is, in fact, the foundational story of Greek philosophy. Now, that, of course, matters because our civilization, the Western democracies, we are the cultural descendants of the Greeks. Our mode of thinking, our systems of government, our philosophies, they all come from the Greeks. And the Greeks, they all point to this one story that to them is the most important defect that a man can have, and that is the defect of hubris. The story is, of course, the flight of Icarus. Icarus was a young man, a boy, and his father was Daedalus, one of the great inventors of Greek mythology. And they were imprisoned for various reasons that aren't important, and Daedalus decided that he was going to escape from the tower where they were being held, both him and his son. And so he created two sets of wings. These wings were made of feathers and wax. And he told his son, Icarus, he told him that he would put on these wings and fly away, but he told his son not to fly too high. Because if he flew too high, the sun would melt the wax on his wings, and he would plummet into the sea. Now, of course, what happened, famously, is that Icarus started to fly away from the prison where they had been held, and in his joy, his exuberance, his natural happiness at having the gift of flight, he started flying higher and higher, and eventually what his father had told him was going to happen indeed happened. The wax on the wings melted, the feathers slipped off his arms, and Icarus fell to his death in the sea. It's such a wonderful story. It's such a wonderful and simple story because it explains the notion of hubris. It explains it in a way that every human being can understand. Because what is hubris? Very simple. You see, there's self-confidence. When you are confident in your ability to do whatever. Let's say, just for the sake of argument, that you are confident that you can repair a car's engine, right? But let's say that you know nothing about car engines, but you claim to people that you do, that you can fix an engine. Oh, fixing an engine is no big deal. Well, that would be arrogance. Arrogance, of course, being the notion that you know something when in fact you do not. Arrogance happens, of course, to those who suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Those people who are ignorant, but they know a little bit, and so from this little bit that they know, they think that they know everything about a given subject, right? Right. But hubris is different. Hubris is between that self-confidence that a person has and the arrogance that comes from ignorance. It's in that in-between area. Hubris happens when somebody is successful and they know what they're doing, more or less. But because of their success, they start to overreach. They start to overreach, and as they overreach, they begin to fail. That, of course, is the point of Icarus's story. He thought that he could fly higher because he was flying after all. And he was flying, he was successfully flying. A wonderful and powerful thing. But in his exuberance, he lost sight of his limitations. And that was the point that the Greeks were trying to make. We human beings, we have limitations. And like that famous line from Clint Eastwood's movies, a man's got to know his limitations. If he doesn't, he will plummet to his death. I've been guilty of hubris. Oh yeah, many times. Many times. Many times I've had great successes, and because of these great successes, I have thought that I could, reach higher, reach more, bite off more than I can chew. And it happened, and I just got hurt. I got hurt, and in some cases, I lost everything I'd worked so hard to achieve. Because a lot of times when you sort of like reach a little bit more, a little bit farther, more than you can really grasp, you fall over, you tip over, you fall and plummet to your perdition. And see, that's the tricky part, see? Because we're always striving for more. We're always reaching. We reach a certain level and we're reaching for more, trying to just climb up. You see what I'm saying? We're always trying to climb up. But the tricky thing becomes, when is it that we're trying to climb up? And when is it we're falling into the trap of hubris? That's the real question. You see, when you succeed, of course, you succeed, you get to a certain level. And once you're at that level, you, of course, want more. It's a natural thing in a man to desire more, to desire to elevate himself even further. It's perfectly natural and normal. But the issue becomes, when is it that you are elevating yourself, just taking one more step up the ladder, and when is it that you're flying over nothing but air and your wings are melting? I wish I could give you a formula. I wish I could say, you know, if this happens or that happens, then you know that you're falling into hubris. I wish I could say that, because it would make it easy, you know? It would make it very, very simple. But the fact of the matter is, you can never tell when you are falling into the trap of hubris or when you are genuinely climbing up and you can make that next ladder. There's no simple formula to distinguish between these two. And better men than you and I will ever be have fallen into the trap of hubris, even though they thought they were trying to just rise up just one more step. You see what I'm saying? You see how dangerous it is? Because you must rise up. You must always be striving for more. Because if you try to maintain your position, if you try to stay at that level, you'll decay. It's inevitable. And this world is dominated and controlled by entropy. And so if you just try to stay in one place, you will inevitably sink. We are living in a world of quicksand. The entire earth is covered in quicksand. You stand still and you will sink. So how do you do this? I mean, what's a guy going to do? How do you distinguish between, climbing up, improving yourself, and not falling into the trap of hubris? I, myself, have found that friends are the solution. Not best friends. Not those besties that you go out and you drink with and you have a good time with. Not those guys, no. I'm thinking of the original Greek definition of a friend. That is, the definition of two men whose minds intersect, who are thinking about the same thing. It doesn't mean that you even have to like the son of a bitch. A lot of times you're going to find that the people who will give you the best advice are the people who you don't particularly care for, or even like, or even want to hang out with. But they can give you the best advice, the advice that will help you. Recently, I had a conversation with a man. It doesn't matter who he was. He's a man that I had thought one thing about. And what I had thought about him was fundamentally accurate. I didn't think that highly of the man. But I had a conversation with him about a subject of mutual interest. And I was thinking of making a move, a certain specific move. And he advised against it. He thought that I would fail. And the more I thought about his words, the more I realized he was dead right. I would fail. Because you see, I'd had a certain degree of success. I'd risen up in the ladder, in the hierarchy, on the pyramid. I'd risen up a level. And I thought I could go for an even higher level. But this man, whom I did not care for that much, and who I find questionable and objectionable on certain aspects, he gave me incredibly good advice. And he helped me discover that I was falling into the trap of hubris. He helped me see by showing me his point of view, and me, of course, being open to hearing him. He showed me the world through his eyes and his judgment. He showed me that what I was planning to do would lead to my ruin, that I would fail, that I would fall like Icarus. And that was truly valuable, and that was a truly valuable thing that he did for me. But the key, of course, was that I listened to him. See? And that's another thing about hubris. See, guys who have fallen into the trap of hubris often as not don't listen to others. They don't listen to the feedback. Because, of course, the crowd says bullshit. The crowd of people, they jabber and this, that, the other, and they tell you contradictory things. I'm talking about listening to somebody, one man, who knows what he's talking about. Listening to that man, listening to what he has to say, and seeing the world through his eyes. There's that expression, great minds think alike. It's very true. A lot of times I hear that somebody else has said the same things that I've said on my videos. I've never watched that man's content. You know, this guy here, that guy over there. I haven't watched their content, but they agree and say more or less the same things that I agree with. And yeah, it's not that they're great minds and so am I. I wish I could say that. No, what it is that, see, we're all seeing reality the same way because that's how reality is. And so the guy over there, the guy over here, and myself, we all agree independent of one another because the truth is always the same. And that's why you want the advice of a friend. Because a lot of times when you're in the middle of your climb, when you're reaching up for more, when you're trying to get to that next level, you're blind. It's not that you can't see the forest for the trees. No, what happens is that, see, you're so hell-bent on your climb that you can't step back and see the whole panoply. You see what I'm saying? But a man, a potential friend who is outside it, and he sees it the way you would see it if you were standing outside, his judgment, his vision, he's the guy you want to talk to, and you want to look through his eyes at the world. Because he will be able to give you good advice, and he will be able to help you figure out if you are truly reaching for more, reaching for something new that you can attain, or if you're falling for the trap of hubris. That's another reason that friends are so important, because they can help you escape the trap of hubris. And so you have to listen to those guys who are telling you things that you don't want to hear. You have to listen to them. They're the most important people. The ones who tell you things that you do not want to hear, but were you in their shoes, you'd be saying too. You see what I'm saying? You have to find those men. And sometimes you're lucky and they are your best friends. The guys you've known since kindergarten and they're with you your whole life. And you're lucky if that's the case. But a lot of other times it's just going to be some random guy. Some random dude that you never expected would give you a wise vision as to what's going on. Men, great men, fall for the trap of hubris because of a lack of humility. Because they have a success, and because of this success they think, I know better. I know better. I know what I'm doing. No. You never know what you're doing. You're lucky if you catch just glimpses of the truth. You have to be humble. And sometimes you're striving for something and you cannot see that you will never reach it. And that's why you need these people around you, friends, true friends, to tell you the truth. That's not to say that some of these friends can't be wrong. And a lot of times when you're trying for something very daring, you're going to hear a lot of naysayers. And again, this is where you have to just use your judgment, your best instincts. This is where you're going to be a little bit blind. Okay? I mean, that's a sad fact of life. That's life. I mean, if life were easy, if it were just an algorithm, yeah, then we wouldn't have to have these conversations. But the fact of the matter is sometimes your friends will tell you, don't do this, but in fact, you can reach it. And other times your friends will say, don't do this, and in fact you won't reach it. And you'll never know. And it's just so, I mean, I wish I could give you an answer, a simple answer, when to listen to your friends and when to not listen to them. When you can achieve something and when you cannot. I wish I could tell you, but there's no such formula. And any man who claims that there is such a formula is lying to you. There is no such formula. I think I'm going to end here because, I mean, it's a difficult thing. It's an issue of judgment and luck. And the most important thing I can tell you is just be humble and recognize that so often as not, you will just be wrong. And sometimes even people that you think very little of will be right.
Thank you.